Hello there. Ooh, that angle's too wrong. Hola, muchachos. It's Inspector Cole's time again. Sorry about that. Slight delay because Mrs. Burling went missing. That's not part of the plot. Don't mention it in the exam. But she's back now. I found her on the floor again. No judgment, please. And so we're able to begin. Hello, everybody. So I've just lost my page even before I've started. Excellent. So we have seen the inspector arrive. This man who seems to be a step ahead of everybody. Ooh, he's turned up. He's talked to Mr. Burling about the death of the girl that he sacked. He's spoken to Sheila. Turns out after the girl was sacked by Burling, the girl then went to work in Millwood's department store. Thank you for the question. I looked up. I don't think Millwood's is a real place. It's interesting because obviously Priestley's vague about where the story is set. It's in this fictional town. It is in the Midlands, sort of north, sort of industrial areas. And there were some little references, and you wondered whether Priestley might have been aware of them. There were a lot of references to a Millwood's shop in Tunstall, which is in the Potteries. That's one of the big industrial areas. Stoke sort of area. But it was a toy shop. So I don't think, well, I'm not going to put a thought in his head. The only other thing I found similar was a place by Cheadle, by Manchester, but rather macabre. And this event happened after Priestley wrote the play, so we can't claim this. He was aware of this. It was a department store, it seemed, or some sort of store. It wasn't totally clear. That was robbed by somebody that your parents would probably know the name of, Ian Brady, who later became infamous because he murdered a child or some children, I think. Yeah, I can't be. I think it is just a fictional shop. Okie dokie. So now we found out that Gerald knew the girl, and we're going to find out a bit more about him this time. Believe you me. And he said he was missing, didn't he? One summer, they said. Well, now we know why. Because he was with this woman. He has Sheila, and Sheila tells him don't try and deny it, because obviously Gerald is thinking about it. So he tries to say to her, don't say anything, you know, he's going to bluff his way out of it. And Sheila says, don't be so stupid. And then the inspector, with his usual impeccable timing, pops his head through the door and says, well, okay, let's begin. Quick sip of water. The water's off in our estate. I was scared. Someone pointed out there's some bottled water. Otherwise, this could have been a short broadcast. Okay, so the inspector pops his head in. Well, Sheila's and Gerald. You see? What did I tell you? What did you tell him? Gerald's sort of reluctance. Look at this bit now. Look at here's what Gerald is. Inspector, I think Miss Burling ought to be excused from any more of this questioning. She's told you all she knows. She's had a long, exciting and tiring day. We were celebrating our engagement, you know, and now she's obviously had about as much as she can stand. You heard her. He means I'm getting hysterical now. And are you? Probably. Well, I don't want to keep you here. I've no more questions to ask you. No, but you haven't finished asking questions, have you? No. You see, says Gerald, then I'm staying. Why should you? It's bound to be unpleasant and disturbing. And you think young women ought to be protected against unpleasant things? If possible, yes. Well, we know one young woman who wasn't, don't we? Suppose I asked for that. Again. The inspector just lining him up. Yeah. Oh, you think women should be protected? You? Yes. Well, pity that girl wasn't protected, eh, mate? Oh, well done, Inspector. Look at Gerald there, eh? Doesn't want to have to talk about anything in front of Sheila, so tries to send her away. She's just a hysterical little girl. Send her to bed. Oh, isn't that lovely and respectful towards your fiancé? What a lovely man. Sheila wants to stay, though. Of course, the other reason for getting rid of her, could also be that he wants to lie. She knows the truth. He wants to get her out of the way so he can be a clever chappie and lie to the inspector and get away with it. Okay. So Gerald said, okay, I suppose I asked for that. Be careful you don't ask for any more, Gerald. I only meant to say to you, why stay when you'll obviously hate it? Can't be any worse for me than it has been. It might be better. I see. What do you see? You've been through it and now you want to see someone else go through it. So that's what you think I'm really like? I'm glad I realised in time, Gerald. No, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. And if you'd really loved me, you couldn't have said that. You listened to that nice story about me. I got that girl sacked from Millwoods, and now you've made up your mind I must obviously be a selfish, vindictive creature. I neither said that nor even suggested it. Then why say I want to see somebody else put through it? That's not what I mean at all. All right then, I'm sorry. Yes, but you don't believe me. This is just the wrong time not to believe me. Okay, and so Gerald sort of saying, you just want to stay to see someone else be put through it. You've been put through it. Now you want to watch everyone else have it. And she's upset by that. But she doesn't fully convince him, I don't think, or explain herself. And then just look at this. The inspector, and it says he cuts in, massively taking charge. So like, I'm stopping this conversation. I've had enough of it. I'm going to step in here. And he takes over from Sheila, and as you'll just see, he explains to Gerald what Sheila's thinking. Allow me, Miss Burling. I can tell you why Miss Burling wants to stay on, and why she says it might be better for her if she did. A girl died tonight. A pretty, lively sort of girl, who never did anybody any harm. But she died in misery and agony, hating life. Don't, please, I know, and I can't stop thinking about it. Now, Miss Burling has just been made to understand what she did to this girl. She feels responsible. And if she leaves us now and doesn't hear any more, then she'll feel she's entirely to blame. She'll be alone with her responsibility. The rest of tonight, all tomorrow, all the next night. Yes, that's it. And I know I'm to blame. And I'm desperately sorry, but I can't believe it. I won't believe it's simply my fault that in the end she committed suicide. That would be too horrible. You see? We have to share something. If there's nothing else, we'll have to share our guilt. Yes, that's true. She go closer to him, wonderingly. I don't understand about you. There's no reason why you should. I don't know much about police inspectors, but the ones I've met weren't a bit like you. And then Mrs. Burling comes in and interrupts this very interesting exchange. So the inspector steps in. It's interesting. Like I said, he's very wise, isn't he? He seems to be able to anticipate what people are saying. His timing's unbelievable. He steps in and he explains what Sheila's feeling and thinking better than she can. Oh, that's a clever trick, isn't it? He says she doesn't want to stay to watch people suffer. She wants to stay because she wants to understand it's not just her fault. She has accepted her responsibility. She knows she is to blame. And if she doesn't hear how other people are to blame, she will go away and genuinely think she is the only one responsible. So she needs to hear the rest of the story. Remember what he said about, if you go easy with me, I'll go easy with you? Sheila, unlike Burling, and it looks like unlike Gerald, has taken the blame. The inspector says she's been made to understand what she did to this girl. She does get it. She feels responsible. So he is satisfied that she has taken on the message. She'd learned a lesson from this. She does consistently react in a horrified way. I know she's a bit selfish at first as well, wasn't she? Oh no, my party's spoiled. But she is genuinely upset about the girl. The inspector, like he said, is going easy with her. And he did give her the option. If you want to go, you can go. It's interesting, isn't it? Because he hasn't said that to anybody else. Quite the opposite. He said stay. So he's feeling she's learned the lesson. And I think you'd agree with me, would you? That Sheila's the one who seems to be actually taking the point. Yeah? Oh, by the way, my connection looks good. And I don't seem to be buffering at all, but I've had no comments at all, so it might be my For some reason the comments aren't coming through, so if so, I apologise. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just not I can't hear you. There's a subtle difference. Right, okay. Now, Mrs. Burling interrupts just when it gets interesting, because Sheila sort of obviously thinking, well, he's explained it better than I can. He's explained what I'm thinking better than I can. And she starts feeling a bit curious, staring at him, going closer to him wonderingly. I don't understand about you. Like she feels there's something different about this man. Yeah, I've never met a police officer like you. The inspector just says there's no reason why you should understand about me. But anyway, this is all interrupted now, because that dreadful old cow, Mrs. Burling, don't use that phrase in your exam, but it's true, is going to come marching in, all, I'm Mrs. Burling, I'm important. Well, hello, Inspector, what a delight to see you. I'm sure you want to be on your way. Oh, my Mrs. Burling voice. Sensational. Okay. In she comes, acting all, well, Priestley puts it this way, she enters, smiling, social, but social is in inverted commas. She's not really social, she doesn't like this little man coming to my house. But she acts like she's okay with him, but she's going to try and get rid of him. Good evening, Inspector. Good evening, madam. I'm Mrs. Burling, you know. My husband has just explained why you're here, and while we'd be glad to tell you anything you want to know, I don't think we can help you much. No, Mother, please. What's the matter, Sheila? I know it sounds silly. What does? You see, I feel you're beginning all wrong, and I'm afraid you'll say something or do something that you'll be sorry for afterwards. I don't understand you. We all started like that, so confident, so pleased of ourselves, until he began asking us questions. Mrs. Burling looks from Sheila to the inspector. You seem to have made a great impression on this child, Inspector. We often do on the young ones. They're more impressionable. He and Mrs. Burling stare at each other for a moment. She didn't expect him to come back with that. Yeah, I have made an impression on young people who are willing to accept new ideas. And she thinks, are you challenging me? And gives him a little bit of a stare. And of course the inspector just stares back at him. Because he's that kind of guy. I love the inspector. He's the best, isn't he? Don't you think Sheila's the most intelligent person in this family? She's actually sussed out that she needs to learn from her experiences. She'll listen to someone rather than just try and drive them out and defend herself. She can see what the inspector's doing and is the lone voice saying to Gerald and then to her mum, don't lie to him. He will exploit that. She spotted straight away, this guy is good. This guy will tear you to pieces given half a chance. So, oh yeah, and the inspector, that's an interesting line that, we often make more of an impression on the young ones. So there's something to bear in mind. Is it going to be true that he'll get through to younger people better than older people? So Mrs. Burling to Sheila, doing the same trick as Gerald to try and get her out of the way because she doesn't like what she's saying. You're looking tired, dear. I think you ought to go to bed and forget about this absurd business. You'll feel better in the morning. Mother, I couldn't possibly go. Nothing could be worse for me. We've settled all that. I'm staying here until I know why that girl killed herself. Nothing but morbid curiosity. Oops. I'm sorry. No, it isn't. Please don't contradict me like that. You know, you're not allowed to contradict your mother. And I don't suppose for a moment that we can understand why the girl committed suicide. Girls of that class. Mother, don't. Please don't. For your own sake as well as ours, you mustn't. Mustn't? What? Really, Sheila? You mustn't try to build up a kind of wall between us and that girl. If you do, then the inspector will just break it down, and it'll be all the worse when he does. I don't understand you, and the inspector. Do you? Yes, and she's right. I beg your pardon? I said yes, I do understand her. And she's right. That, I consider, is a trifle impertinent, Inspector. And Sheila gives a short, hysterical laugh. Now what is it, Sheila? I don't know. Perhaps it's because impertinent's such a silly word, but Mother, do stop before it's too late. if you mean that the inspector will take offence. No, I never take offence. I'm glad to hear it, though I must add that it seems to me that we have more reason for taking offence. Let's leave offence out of it, shall we? I think we'd better, Mrs. Burling. So do I. I'm talking to the inspector now, if you don't mind. And then she goes rather grandly to the inspector, sitting in the armchair by the fireplace, trying to make an impression upon him. I realise that you may have to conduct some sort of inquiry, but I may say that you seem to be conducting it in a rather peculiar and offensive manner. You know, of course, that my husband was Lord Mayor only 2 years ago, and that he's still a magistrate. Mrs. Burling, the inspector knows all that, and I don't think it's a very good idea to remind him. It's crazy. Stop it, please, Mother. Where's the inspector gone? Where is he? Oh, they're right, you know. Really? Yes. Now, what about Mr. Burling? He's coming back in a moment. He's just talking to my son Eric, who seems to be in an excitable, silly mood. Okay, I can break off just for a second there. A lot to take in there. Mrs. Burling trying to take on the inspector. Poor good luck, girl. She's so pompous and arrogant and won't listen to Sheila. Sheila will listen to the inspector. Gerald will listen to Sheila to a point. Sheila understands, don't do this. She says to Mrs. Burling, don't build up a wall. Just tell him the truth, because you've built up a wall between you and him. He'll knock it down, and it'll be much worse for all of us when he does. Yeah, be nice. She's right. Like he said, be easy with me. I'll be easy with you. She's been honest with the inspector. He's treating her fairly. Burling has been difficult with the inspector. The inspector's given him a few slaps, hasn't he? Yeah. Some of the things that Mrs. Burling says straight away, apart from the fact she's angry that A, Sheila will stand up to her, how dare she, and B, the inspector stands up to her in her own house, taking Sheila's side. But apart from that, the way she says, clearly she thinks the inquiry is a waste of time. You know, as far as she's concerned, a working class girl has killed herself. So what? There's lots of them out there. They're not. The life of a working class girl is not worth anything. And she, at one point, she said, I realise that you may have to conduct some sort of inquiry. I mean, think about the language she uses. Think about how dismissive she is. I realise that you may have to conduct some kind of inquiry. You know, this is not an important thing. Maybe you have to, maybe you don't, because that life's not important. Some kind of inquiry. You know, just ask a few questions and leave her at that. You know what I mean? That's how important this girl is. Summed up by the quote where she says, I don't suppose for a moment that we can understand why the girl committed suicide. Girls of that class, and Sheila interrupts her there, and good job, because what's she going on to say? Working class girls do that sort of thing. How can we understand them? Yeah, we're better than them. They're just scummy little people. We're the privileged. Can you see Priestley's points all coming out here? She does not value that girl's life. She thinks that the working class are a different species, perhaps, from her, you know, can't be respected. You can't understand how their simple minds work. And so Sheila's trying to stop it. There's that nice bit where she talks about taking offence at the inspector's behaviour, and the inspector says, let's leave offence out of this, because of course offence has two meanings. It can mean you're offended by somebody. It can also be a criminal offence, which we could be talking about here. We don't know where this is going. Gerald agrees there. Yeah, let's drop this, Mrs. Burling. And Mrs. Burling just rebukes him, tells him, what, I'm talking to the inspector now, I don't mind. You know, I'm sorting this out, shut up. Yeah. There's that interesting use of the word impertinent. Now, Sheila used that to describe the girl in the shop before she fully understood what she'd done. And Mrs. Burling's just said to the inspector, impertinent, and we'll see it again. To be impertinent is to be rude to someone. But really, I would say it's particularly you're being rude to somebody who is above you. So, if a child is rude to a teacher, the teacher could perhaps turn around and say, stop being impertinent, you know, I'm in charge. If a teacher is rude to a pupil, it would... Well, I don't think it would quite be right for the child to say, stop being impertinent. So this idea that someone beneath them is showing them attitudes, that links into this class thing. Oh, I forgot to tell you my favourite joke, didn't I? I normally do when that bit about taking offence comes up. I saw a man walking down the road the other day with a gate under his arm. I didn't say anything in case he took offence. Thank you all. I'm here all week. I actually am. I'm here all weekend, I suppose. Yeah, that's true. That'd be a great name for a TV show done during lockdown. Sorry, my mind's racing, clearly. Also, Mrs. Burling, when she's having a go at the inspector, let's just find her. Oh no, this page. Where is it? The reason I was surprised by it, I've just got myself I've downloaded a version of it, and it does appear to be a sort of first edition, sort of early version, and some of the words, but more stage direction, are slightly different. And there's a bit here. There we are. When the inspector is standing up to her, it's the stage direction from Mrs. Burling is trying to crush him. Wow. So that's her attitude, yeah? You're the police. How dare you come to my house? I crush you now. Whoa. Okay, anyway. The subject has changed now because she said that Burling is with Eric because Eric is a bit overexcitable. He's rather too much to drink. Isn't he used to drinking? No, of course not. He's only a boy. No, he's a young man. And he drinks far too much. Sheila! I don't want to get poor Eric into trouble. He's probably in enough trouble already, but we really must stop these silly pretences. This isn't the time to pretend that Eric isn't used to drink. He's been steadily drinking too much for the last 2 years. So Mrs. Burling is staggered. It isn't true. You know him, Gerald. You're a man. You must know it isn't true. Well, Mr. Croft? I'm afraid it is, Actually, I've never seen much of him outside this house, but, well, I have gathered that he does drink pretty hard. And this is the time you choose to tell me. Yes, of course it is. That's what I mean when I talked about building up a wall that's sure to be knocked down. It makes it all the harder to bear. But it's you and not the inspector here who's doing it. Yes, don't you see? He hasn't... Oh, beg your pardon. Yeah, Sheila, yeah. Yes, don't you see? He hasn't started on you yet. Oh, bang, Sheila. Yeah. Mrs. Burling saying, it's not the inspector who's winding me up here, it's you and Gerald. And then she's, yeah, because he hasn't started on you yet. Yeah, he goes one person at a time. It's not started on you yet. Careful, Mum. Still time to show a bit of common sense. Mrs. Burling recovers herself. If necessary, I should be glad to answer any questions the inspector wishes to ask me, though naturally I don't know anything about this girl. We'll see, Mrs. Burling. In comes Burling. He's a bit hot and bothered. I've been trying to persuade Eric to go to bed, but he won't. Now he says you told him to stay up. Did you? Yes, I did. Why? Because I shall want to talk to him, Mr. Burling. I can't see why you should, but if you must, I suggest you do it now. Have him in and get it over, and let the lad go. No, I can't do that yet. I'm sorry, but he'll have to wait. Now look here, Inspector. He must wait his turn. You see? No, I don't. And please be quiet, Sheila. Inspector, I've told you before, I don't like your tone, nor the way you're handling this inquiry, and I don't propose to give you much more rope. You needn't give me any rope. No, he's giving us rope so that we'll hang ourselves. What's the matter with that child? Overexcited, and she refuses to go. Well, come along. What is it you want to know? At the end of January last year, this girl, Eva Smith, had to leave Millwoods because Miss Burling compelled them to discharge her. And then she stopped being Eva Smith looking for a job and became Daisy Renton with other ideas. Mr. Croft, when did you first get to know her? Burling and Mrs. Burlinger, shocked. Where did you get the idea that I did know her? It's no use, Gerald. You're wasting time. Can I just jump back quickly? There you go. So Gerald immediately tries to deny it. Yeah. Oh, what? I didn't know her. What? Can I just mention as well, just going back slightly, well, Mrs. Burling says that Sheila again is overexcited and refuses to go. That line though about rope, I'm not going to give you much more rope. Have you know the phrase, if give someone enough rope and they'll hang themselves? And basically it's that let someone keep talking and they'll incriminate themselves. Again, as a head of year, you know, let someone keep talking about what they've done, and eventually, if they've done it, they'll start tripping themselves up. So you give someone enough rope, they'll hang themselves, and Sheila's trying to point out that's what the inspector is doing to you. He's just letting you go on and reveal yourselves as these awful people who've done bad things. Anyway, sorry. So Gerald tried to deny it and says, why do you think I know her? As soon as I mentioned the name Daisy Renton, it was obvious you'd known her. You gave yourself away at once. Of course he did. And anyhow, I knew already. When and where did you first meet her? All right. If you must have it, I met her for some time in March last year in the bar at the Palace. I mean the Palace Music Hall here in Brumley. Well, we didn't think he meant Buckingham Palace. Thanks, you're going to be a great help. I can see. You said your piece, and you're obviously going to hate this, so why on earth don't you leave us to it? Nothing would induce me. I want to understand what happens when a man says he's so busy at the works that he can hardly ever find time to come and see the girl he's supposed to be in love with. I wouldn't miss it for... Be quiet, please. Yes, Mr. Croft, in the bar at the Palace Variety Theatre. Just a quick music hall explanation. Music halls, you know, in these days, there's no TV, and so one of the main forms of entertainment would be the music hall. And the music hall basically would be a theatre, and it'd have what were called, you know, variety acts. I was going to say you don't see variety acts anymore. Actually, I don't think that's totally true. I would argue more it's got a different name now. You know, when you see things like Britain's Got Talent, it's like basically, I know they're amateurs, but it's basically, or supposed to be, it's basically a show with lots of different types of acts in it. And that's a variety show. So you could have comedians, you could have singers, dancers, magicians. So music hall be a variety act thing. Now, it generally was more, I would say, aimed at an adult audience. I'm not saying necessarily it was rude, although you'd have some like sort of cheeky songs, if you like. Wouldn't go as far as people do now, but sort of cheeky songs that have a double meaning. Look up, my mind's gone blank, George Formby, if you want evidence of this. Massively popular performer, he was very cheeky chappy, but his songs often had two meanings, one of which was a bit rude. And yeah, it wouldn't necessarily be a place you might expect Gerald to go to, as he's posh. It's got a bar downstairs, you know, some people will be having a drink, watching the performances. So, okay. So he said he was there, yeah? I happened to go down there one night after a rather long, dull day, and as the show wasn't very bright, I went down into the bar for a drink. It's a favourite haunt of women of the town. Women of the town? Prostitutes. Yes, but here, in Brumley? One of the worst cities in the country for prostitution. Quite true, but I see no point in mentioning the subject, especially pointing out that Sheila is here. It'd be much better if Sheila didn't listen to this story at all. But you're forgetting I'm supposed to be engaged, the hero of it. Go on, Gerald. You went down into the bar, which is a favourite haunt of women of the town. I'm glad I amuse you. Come along, Mr. Croft. What happened? I didn't intend to stay down there long. I hate those hard-eyed, dough-faced women. But then I noticed a girl who looked quite different. She was very pretty. Soft brown hair and big dark eyes. My God. What's the matter? Sorry, I've suddenly realised, taking it in properly, she's dead. Yes, she's dead. Go on. The girl was charmingly dressed too, in a simple and expensive sort of way, and although she looked young and fresh and charming and, what shall I say, the opposite of hard and rough and able to look after herself, she was quite out of place down there, and obviously she wasn't enjoying herself. Old Joe Meggerty, half drunk and goggle-eyed, had wedged her into a corner with that obscene fat carcass of his. This notice to be disgusting, and surely you don't mean Alderman Meggerty? Of course I do. He's a notorious womanizer, one of the worst sots and rogues in Brumley. Well, really? Alderman Meggerty? Well, we are learning something tonight. Of course we are, but everybody knows about that horrible old Meggerty. A girl I know had to see him at the town hall one afternoon, and she only escaped with a torn blouse. Sheila! Go on. This girl saw me looking at her and then gave me a glance, obviously an SOS, so I went across and told Joe Meggerty some nonsense that the manager had a message for him or something. Got him out the way, and then told the girl if she didn't want any more of that sort of thing, she'd better let me take her out of there. She agreed at once. Where did you go? We went to the county hotel, which I knew would be quiet at that time of night, and we had a drink or two and talked. Did she drink much at that time? No, she only had a port and lemonade or some such concoction. All she wanted was to talk. Little friendliness, and I gathered that Joe Meggerty's advances had left her rather shaken, as well they might. She talked about herself? Yes, I answered her questions about it. I asked her questions about herself. She told me her name was Daisy Renton, that she'd lost both parents, and she came originally from somewhere outside Brumley. She also told me she'd had a job in one of the works here and had to leave after a strike. She said something about the shop too, but wouldn't say what it was, and she was deliberately vague about what happened. I couldn't get any exact details from her about her past life. She wanted to talk about herself just because she felt I was interested and friendly, but at the same time she wanted to be Daisy Renton, not Eva Smith. In fact, I heard that name for the first time tonight. What she did let slip, though she didn't mean to, was that she was desperately hard up, and at that moment was actually hungry. I made the people at the county find some food for her. And then you decided to keep her as your mistress. What? Mother, it was obvious from the start. Go on, General, don't mind Mother. I discovered, not that night, but 2 nights later when we met again, not accidentally this time, of course, that in fact she hadn't a penny and was going to be turned out of the miserable back room she had. It happened that a friend of mine, Charlie Brunswick, had gone off to Canada for 6 months and let me have the key of a very nice little set of rooms he had in Morgan Terrace, and had asked me to keep an eye on them for him and use them if I wanted to. So I insisted on Daisy moving into those rooms of Charlie's and made her take some money to keep her going there. I want you to understand that I didn't install her there so I could make love to her. That came afterwards. I made her go to Morgan Terrace because I was sorry for her and didn't like the idea of her going back to the Palace Bar. I didn't ask for anything in return. I see. Yes, but why are you saying that to him? You should have ought to be saying it to me. I suppose I ought, really. I'm sorry, Sheila. Somehow I know. Somehow he makes you. He does, you know. But she became your mistress. Yes, I suppose it was inevitable. She was young and pretty and warm-hearted and intensely grateful. I became at once the most important person in her life. You understand? Yes. She was a woman. She was lonely. Were you in love with her? Just what I was going to ask. Really, I must object. Why should you do any protesting? It was you who turned the girl out in the first place. Well, I only did what any employer might have done, and what I was going to say was that I protest about the way in which my daughter, a young, unmarried girl, is being dragged into this. Your daughter isn't living on the moon. She's here in Brumley too. Yes, and it was I who had the girl turned out of her job at Millward's. And I'm supposed to be engaged to Gerald. And I'm not a child, don't forget. I have a right to know. Were you in love with her, Gerald? hard to say. I didn't feel about her the way she felt about me. Of course not. You're the wonderful fairy prince. You must have adored it, Gerald. All right, I did. Nearly any man would have done. It's probably the best thing you've said tonight. At least it's honest. Did you see her every night? No, I wasn't telling you a complete lie when I said I'd been very busy at the works all the time. We were very busy. But of course I did see a great deal of her. I don't think we want any further details with this disgusting affair. I do. Anyhow, you haven't had any details yet. You're not going to have any. Ooh, what was that? You know, Mrs. Burling, it wasn't disgusting. It's disgusting to me. Yes, but you didn't come into this, did you, Mother? Is there anything else you'd like to know, that you ought to know? Yes. When did this affair end? I can tell you exactly. In the first week of September. I had to go away for several weeks then, on business, and by that time Daisy knew it was coming to an end, so I broke it off definitely before I went. How did she take it? Better than I'd hoped, but she was very gallant about it. That was nice for you. No, it wasn't. She told me she'd been happier than she'd ever been before, but that she knew it couldn't last. Hadn't expected it to last. She didn't blame me at all. Wish to God she had now. Perhaps I'd feel better about it. She had to leave those rooms. Yes, we'd agreed about that. She'd saved a little money during the summer. She'd lived very economically on what I'd allowed her, and didn't want to take any more from me. But I insisted on a parting gift of enough money, though it wasn't so very much, to see her through to the end of the year. Did she tell you what she proposed to do after you'd left her? No. She refused to talk about that. I got the idea once or twice from what she said that she thought of leaving Brumley. Whether she did or not, I don't know. Did she? Yes, she went away for about 2 months. To some seaside place. By herself? Yes, I think she went away to be alone, to remember all that had happened between you. How do you know that? She kept a rough sort of diary, and she said there that she had to go away and be quiet and remember, just to make it last longer. She felt there'd never be anything as good for her again. So she had to make it last longer. I see. Well, I never saw her again, and that's all I can tell you. That's all I want to know from you. In that case, as I'm rather more upset by this business than I probably appear to be, and well, I'd like to be alone for a little while. I'd be glad if you'd let me go. Go? Where? Home? No, I'll just walk out somewhere by myself. I'll come back. All right, Mr. Croft. Gerald starts to go. Just in case you forget or decide not to come back, Gerald, I think you better take this with you. She hands him the ring. Burling rises and takes a step. I see it. I was expecting this. I don't dislike you as I did half an hour ago, Gerald. In fact, in some odd way, I rather respect you more than I've ever done before. I knew anyhow you were lying about those months last year when you hardly came near me. I knew there was something fishy about that time, and now at least you've been honest. And I believe what you told us about the way you helped her at first, just out of pity. It was my fault, really, that she was so desperate when you first met her. But this has made a difference. You and I aren't the same people who sat down to dinner here. We'd have to start all over again, getting to know each other. Now, Sheila, I'm not defending him, but you must understand, there are a lot of young men... Don't interfere, please, Father. Gerald knows what I mean, and you apparently don't. Yes, I know what you mean. He goes to the door. But I'm coming back, if I may. All right. Well, I don't know. I think we've just about come to an end of this wretched business. I don't think so. Excuse me. Oh, really? I don't know. And the front door slams. That's it for today, chaps. I'm slightly disconcerted by the fact that comments are not coming through, so I'll knock it on the head fairly quickly. I think there's a lot to discuss about Gerald there, and maybe it's best if I start with that tomorrow. Because, like I said, comments aren't coming through. We can't have a proper interactive chat about it. So I'll start off chatting about Gerald tomorrow. Oh, sorry, that one itchy nose. And so I'll see you at 10:30. Ta-ta, chaps.